Welcome to Foundation Repair Success Secrets, the podcast that's rocking the foundation repair industry. Discover how to boost your leads, raise your profits, and lift your digital presence. Together, let's dig deep and transform your foundation repair business.
We have a really cool guest today, guys, and this is another episode of Founder. I can't even say it. We're starting off funny today. Foundation Repair Success Secrets. I think I'm going to let you talk 100% of the time on this podcast to start like that. We're welcoming Brandon today on the show. How's it going?
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. You're speaking more clear than I am this morning, so that's a good start. Well, tell us about how you got into the business.
Sure. So I didn't kind of strategically go into foundation repair. I actually started off my career in banking, which, is probably kind of a weird transition to get into foundation repair. But so I started off with me and my brother kind of dabbling in real estate basically for a couple of years, about maybe 10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago. And we did some real estate flipping. And through that process, we actually had a house that needed a lot of foundation work. So we kind of, we had some guys that were working on just regular kind of handyman type items. And we just wanted to try to tackle it. So we did that one house, and it just so happened the way we were buying the foreclosures, we were purchasing foreclosures, was getting a little more competitive at that time. So it just made sense to come up with some way to kind of transition the business. And so we did that one house. It went successfully. We did another one, and then, there wasn't any point in time where it just kind of happened. It just organically, kind of laid one after the other. And that was about probably 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago. And it just kind of rolled into where we are today. So, quit my job at the bank. It got a little too much to do both. And that was 10 years ago. So, that's how I went from banking into construction.
Got it. Super cool. So anyone who's in your shoes, of course, not in your territory, every territory but yours, who has kind of a similar idea, foundation repair, perhaps specific, even if they're just in the business of construction, things of that nature. Do you have any tips from that jumping off point, from being employed to being an employer? What are some of the little intricacies there?
Man, that's a lot to unravel, but just be willing to fail, right? And be okay. Because that's really the only way you can get better is to, make you got to make decisions quick, and you've got to kind of learn from them, right? And you got to be okay with that, because there's nobody, and this is a problem for me a little bit, because I want to think 4 or 5 steps ahead sometimes. And when you do that, it stops you from taking action. It's like, just do step 1 and you're in it. You realize what you did wrong, and that makes step 2 become more clear at that point. So I would say to just trust your instinct, adapt, and be willing to learn from your mistakes is really kind of the, coming out of an employee, working for a company, you've got kind of a directive, you got your job duties and all of that. But as a business owner, you kind of just wing it, and you got to be okay with that. Just do it, make a decision, and then adjust.
Okay. Any kind of brass tacks in terms of like money in the bank, or like, is there a line in the sand? Something that I heard you say is, I was so busy I couldn't do both. And something that I've always heard is, to some extent, hopefully the side hustle becomes competitive with the main hustle, not just as a time, but also possibly as a money type of thing,
right?
Preferably for a quarter, 2 quarters, some sort of sustained amount of time. Did you have kind of a line in the sand for savings or checking with a spouse, or, any of those sorts of things where you said, all right, it's not safe the other side, but I've kind of proofed it out over some time and I feel safe enough that I can make the jump? Or was it just, we're rolling the dice. I'm going to not be a banker about this. I'm going to roll the dice and take some risk.
Yeah, I think, just the key is just keep it all from your spouse. Don't tell them. I'm just kidding. Definitely not. Yeah.
Then you got other problems, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Deal with. But yeah, I mean, you're right. That is a great point. Is it kind of depends on your stage in life too. Because I was a little bit older, had a family, and you don't want to just risk it all when you've got kids and a wife and all of that. I would say it kind of depends. If I was 18, 19 years old, you can kind of go all in at that point potentially and just kind of start a business. And if it fails, it's just you and a chuck in a truck.
Hmm.
Then that's you can recover from that. So, but I would say for anyone that's kind of a little bit, maybe they've had a little bit of a career, they've got some responsibilities in place. I think that's a great point, and that's something I did too. Is I had enough where I felt like we could weather a storm of 3 or 4 months of no jobs or and that sort of thing. So I mean, obviously you can't get to a point where there is no risk at all. You can't de-risk,
Mm.
right? So it's different for every person, but I do think you want to have probably 3 months or more of just that security to keep the business going if you can. But the thing I say that, but don't let that keep you from making a decision if you're ready to go.
Mm. That's fair. Okay. I like it. Yeah, it's very interesting because I think your guidance of when you're younger, you can take some more risk and roll that. You're already broke. I mean,
Yeah.
right? When you're 18, 19, I don't want you going bankrupt if you don't have to. Don't get me wrong. Like I highly advise. Frankly, my outlook. I wish I had done this to some extent. I had done consulting and things like that once I got out of school, and I frankly, I knew how to build websites. I knew how to do photography, videography, that kind of thing. But I never worked for a marketing company, and I jumped into marketing, which I mean, my degree was, partially marketing and things of that nature, but there's a difference, big difference between a degree or some sort of schooling and the real world.
Right.
So yeah, that is interesting. Do you think in your journey there could have been a phase perhaps where you could have gone, worked for a company in your space? Do you think that could have helped level out the bumps and humps?
Oh man.
I'm not saying for an extensive amount of time, but maybe for a year or two, been a really good employee. You can't be a good owner if you're not
Yeah.
able to do well as a team member, I feel.
Yeah. No, I think that would be, if you have the opportunity, I would say my advice would be if there's a space that you want to maybe start a business in and you're thinking about that, and you're not working in that space, go ahead and try to insert yourself into that space so you can kind of learn, because that's a great point. Because many of the things that I learned along the way was, thing industry specific things that I didn't know. So if you can get into a company that's already doing that type of work, whatever it is, if it's plumbing, if it's foundation repair, electrical, you know, um, get in it, and you can start to learn those pieces. So it'll make the learning curve, not quite as steep.
Yeah, I love that. And even if, in your instance with the bank and things, if you're going to take a pay cut, you can see the vision. We've talked about investment properties and things. I kind of did it through self-education. We can go back to the Robert Kiyosaki and things of that nature. But boy, is there one thing that I wish I would have done is, and same with the marketing world, is that I could have said, hey, by all means, I could read, listen to podcasts, do, YouTube, all these things. There is nothing better than just getting under a seasoned in the game player. And it, again, guys, for our audience, it doesn't need to be extensive. I recommend, if you can do it for some time, that's better. Doing it for 3 months is not, necessarily recommended,
Yeah.
but 2, 3 years, something like that. I mean, I get that you're excited and want to move and, make stuff happen, but the opportunity more than likely will still be there in the 2 or 3 years. Get that wisdom, live, real time, beyond just the videos and podcasts and books. Um, yeah, interesting kind of to reflect on that. And you and I obviously have made it through and are doing just fine. But man, if there's one thing I could recommend to people considering this who are listening, I think that would have been a massive thing to consider for maybe the both of us, just some period of time doing it.
Yeah, and I would say one thing to kind of tag on to that a little bit would be, once you get in, and let's say you did or didn't have that baseline, don't be afraid to reach out to people, because everybody that has kind of climbed a little bit of that mountain, maybe there's just there's all sorts of mountain tops, right? I feel like I'm just at the bottom, but if you've made a any kind of headway, you want to share that, right? So
Mm,
don't be afraid to ask. That's something that I have learned recently, is that when you reach out to people and ask, they are willing. When someone asks me any question, I love to share what I've learned, and there's lots of things that I don't know yet, but I would say be curious, and don't be afraid to ask.
right. Yeah, love that. That's awesome. And that's part of why we have this is it's not super buttoned up. I mean, we're all professionals here, but we can make jokes. We could have fun. You even said a funny pun earlier. I don't know if you realized it, but you had mentioned weather the storm. Uh, it was something like, we had enough capital to weather the storm for like 3 to 4 months. And I'm laughing inside, like thinking of my clients and stuff. They're like, bring on the storm. We're doing a rain dance. We want
Oh,
it to rain.
okay.
It's always been a kind of unique irony to me. It's almost like personal injury attorneys. No one in their heart wants someone to get in a car accident or to get injured, or to have a slip and fall or anything. But yet there's this other side. You guys are on a healthy, it's okay side. It's just asking for rain. It's not hurting anyone.
Yeah.
They're on the side where they're like, the more chaos happens, the more money we make, the more cases we get. You guys, it's like someone's at the park and they're like, I don't know, it's kind of cloudy. This is my day off. I'm here having a picnic. And the rain comes down, and you guys are like, yes, bring on the rain, within reason.
Yeah, the phones will.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny how that works, the ups and downs of that. Now, you had some really cool insights. This isn't a marketing podcast per se, but I'm kind of the marketing nerd. You had some cool insights where, we had kind of talked before. You had mentioned things like Upwork. You had, really kind of mentioned a number of organizations. Can you give some insights? I thought that was really cool how you have worked on getting your marketing and your funnel and everything rocking and rolling.
Yeah. So marketing is something. I mean, everybody kind of has things that maybe they're more interested in, right? And you want to kind of dive into those things. Marketing is one for me that has always been kind of interesting. Um, so yeah, many years ago, we were trying to figure out our pay per click, the PPC for Google, and I didn't know how to do it. And at that time it was me and my brother, and he didn't have any experience doing either. We kind of played around with it. So at that time I had reached out to went on Upwork and just kind of, at that, I haven't been out there recently, but at that time you could kind of look and see, you could interview different people, and they had different work products that they've done, and you could even, I think, call maybe references. So it was a great way to kind of test out, on a contract basis. And we ended up finding a really great person to help with our pay per click to get it going. So marketing can be anywhere from just hire, if you're grown to a point where you can actually bring in a marketing person, that could be it. And especially if you're not kind of, you want to focus on operations or something. But as you're starting a company, obviously you can't do that. You can't hire a marketing person right out of the gate. So you have to kind of figure some of these things out. And I would say you don't have to know how to do everything, but at least you need to become somewhat familiar, so that when you're having discussions with any, an agency, like yourself, or anyone, you can at least, kind of direct those conversations a little bit more strategic.
That's fair. Yeah, I love that. I think it makes sense. And yeah, like you said, you don't need to be deadly, but somewhat dangerous. Focus on your core business, your core mission. Um, how was it in the beginning, initially getting business? You guys had kind of an organic way of starting off, but how was that? When did you input the marketing machine?
Yeah.
How long did it take for that marketing machine to kind of kick off?
And I remember thinking back, and we we would have a day go by without a call, or maybe 2 days.
Mm.
Like, oh my gosh, is this thing gonna work? Like, uh, it was pretty stressful, honestly, when you're kind of getting off the ground a little bit and you don't have the machine kind of working and the referrals and because once you do business in the area and you do good work, you got the referrals from the realtors, the engineers, neighbors, like that kind of, helps build the snowball a little bit. But, prior to that, nobody knew who we were except for our, family and friends, which honestly, that's where you start, right? You do work and I would even say do discounted work for your family and friends. You got to get something started and you got to get reviews out there. I would say until you get 4 or 5 reviews, like you got to focus on just that alone, is doing a good job for someone that or maybe you don't know, but like you've got to get those reviews in place.
Mm. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it's very interesting the business because like you mentioned, kind of the seasonality. Of course, there's the actual seasons, but then like the day to day, with the trends of rain, no rain, and we don't always say that the rain is the end all be all. There's so many other variables, with the soil and things of that nature. Um, yeah, it's fascinating. So I would guess, kind of being transparent, you have had moments where you're like, oh, the ship is gonna sink. It wasn't always on the up and up and
Yeah.
feeling great and everything of that nature.
Yeah. Yesterday. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, it's feast or famine in some cases, as you're growing a company. So you definitely have those ups and downs. And that's another thing, being an entrepreneur, you have to kind of be okay with that ride a little bit, because there are some really highs when you've got, several commitments that come through. Just kind of on a side note, what we used to do in the office is those little
Mhm.
bells you put out for like a diner when orders up, it's like ding ding.
Yeah, right.
We would have those around the office, and anytime there was a commitment that came through, we would ding it for every $1,000. If it was a $10,000 commitment, ring it 10 times. And what it did, I mean, it was kind of a fun thing, but it just kind of created that excitement, or just to have everyone have that great feeling for that day. But
Mm,
so there are some of those where, you have the days and maybe a week or so where things are kind of, got an upset customer. So you got to be able to just kind of be okay with your emotions going up and down a little bit. Right.
mhm. That is interesting. I could see that. There is something about business where, almost working at a company, you have an invincibility. If you're, hitting your KPIs, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're like, hey, I'm good. The question is, do I want to stay with them or do I want to leave them to find the next best thing?
Right.
Which leads me to another question, just a second here. But in business, man, I've been hearing this a lot lately, and I don't know if you could relate to it, but there's an angle of it's not the um, it's not the starvation in your stomach of the business at a certain point, down the road and things of that nature as you scale up. It's the indigestion, like you actually ate too much.
Yep.
I don't know. Can you relate to that or understand that? Because I've been hearing that more and more and more and more lately.
I,
It's like all around me. It's crazy.
I feel that right now, honestly, that resonates with me, because I have a tendency to, and I have to catch myself, try to start too many things or do too many initiatives, and you don't get all of them completed. You got to kind of stay focused, right? So that's the indigestion piece. Is I want to take on 3 or 4 different initiatives, and you really can't make headway on any of them if you do that sometimes.
Mm,
So it's almost best to just take one at a time, 1 or 2, and just really focus on those, knock them out, and just you can put that off to the shelf, and just don't forget about it. But don't try to get everybody involved with all these things that aren't going to have a lot of momentum behind it. So one of the things that we're actually getting ready to implement as a company is EOS. So I don't know if you have any
okay.
clients that are on that. But we've researched it and I really love it. And I think that will help with, setting everyone's quarterly rocks and holding everyone accountable on a weekly basis and kind of getting all of that kind of organized and in the area of focus.
Okay. Yep. EOS, super, super common to a lot of people who've actually implemented it and implemented it to the extent that they're very happy about it. And I would say too, it's kind of a milestone that you guys are even able to consider it, because for like younger, more kind of amateur type companies, or kind of, they're still in the growing phases and things. EOS like above and beyond them, where even you talk to a consultant who does it or an implementer who does it, they're like, yeah, you guys got other things to take care of. I can't, you're a little too entry level for me to help. But I have heard great things from rock star business owners, like people who really, really know what they're doing. And they've said EOS has made a massive difference. So that's cool.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Super cool. When should it be fully rolled out for you guys? Takes a few months.
We're meeting with the first meeting with our implementer in I believe May, like mid-May,
Okay.
late May.
Got it. And it's funny, I know one of the key things I've heard is rocks. What, like rocks, kind of, chunks, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Can you, and I know that you're meeting with them, can you maybe explain to the audience like some of the quick basics, at least to the extent that you know of?
Yeah, sure. So the way I kind of think about that is, you know, each kind of person in the organization, let's say you've got a marketing manager, you've got an operations manager. You want to kind of boil their job down to a couple of, 2 or 3 items that will really move the needle for that particular quarter. So that's like a rock. So an example of a rock that we didn't call it a rock, but it, looking back, it was a major rock. Is we've got someone in our company that was responsible for rolling out a new CRM system, right?
Okay.
So we're on Service Fusion. That's our current CRM system. But at that time, that was a major thing that needed to have attention, and we needed to check on it, and we needed to make sure it was progressing appropriately. So that was obviously her big rock for that quarter, is to make sure we can implement that, test it, and roll it out. Right. So that's an example of just it's not her entire job, but it was a major piece of it for that particular time.
Okay. Got it. Makes sense. Like an ownership of a specific end of the race, more or less, timeline, specificity,
Yep.
Achievable, impactful. It's not just a little tiny this step, this step, this step. It's like,
Yeah.
this is the massive thing we need you to hit. Okay, super cool.
Yeah,
that's nice. And
I say the key point on that too is that the person doesn't have to do everything for that initiative. They just have to, like,
right.
you have to own it and make sure that all.
Yep. That's super cool. Yeah, I do like that. And to my understanding, does everyone on the team come into the fold, or is it just executive leadership? Is it just management or something of that nature?
Yeah, I think you start at the kind of the management level. But yeah, I guess I will find out once we kind of get more involved. Yeah.
That is fair. Okay, cool. Any kind of insights, with what you're caring and willing to share? I could probably assume some things, but approach to sales slash marketing, do you guys have a pretty tight process? Is it, something where you guys are pulling out iPads? How do you guys go about, getting with someone and approaching them before even first meeting,
Yeah.
and then the meeting? How does that look?
I will say, it's something that we're continuing to work on. But I do think, looking back, 2-3 years and kind of where we are now, it's so much better. So, customer calls in, we set up an appointment. we send them an email, I think the day before, that goes out introducing, which sales technician is coming out, and, a little picture, a bio of them, and also a text message to kind of like let them, just to make sure, because what we had also in the past is that we would show up and, customers wouldn't be home, which that still happens from time to time, but that kind of cuts down on a little bit of, well, I thought it was Tuesday and it was Wednesday. And it just introduces our company to the, and the particular person to the customer that's wanting the estimate done. So once
Okay.
we have some collateral that we present the customer that has, different services we offer, and it's kind of got some nice little graphics to it, and just something for the customer to hold on to and have, and reference. But yeah, we've got iPads that we go out, and our goal is to provide an estimate that day. That's the goal. Now, we don't hit that every single time, but definitely, if we're able to, we'd like to get the estimate to them so that if they're ready to commit, we can go ahead and, get them on the books and move forward. But then, obviously, if they don't commit that day, we follow up with them through calling them, texting them, emailing, and then, ultimately, if they don't commit, they just kind of go into a database where every maybe quarter or so we come up with some sort of promotion that we throw out there that tries to bring them back potentially, and that's worked, here and there. So that's kind of just a quick kind of look at our sales process.
Cool. Love it. Yeah, everyone's so different with that. I've heard some stuff, I guess from the more normal, ethical, and caring to the we're coming in hot and heavy. An interesting question. I mean, it does have some validity to it, but it's just kind of a unique question. Is on the front end asking if the decision maker will be home.
Yeah.
Like that verbiage kind of, it goes both ways. From a sales perspective, I'm like, yep, all for it, got it. But from a communications perspective, it's like, that feels a little weird. Or I think I even heard someone we were talking to, they mentioned like, will will a man or a husband be home kind of thing. And I'm like, that kind of feels like the 70s or 60s or something of that nature.
Yeah, I don't rates will be very high on that particular job.
It was just like, okay. And then another, kind of unique, maybe old school approach is kind of like, you know, um, stay in front of them until they sign, start at this price, make sure that you buffer in room to be able to come down, in different increments until they sign. Yeah, very interesting. There's so many different dynamics. I feel a
Yeah.
lot of the people we attract to come on the podcast are doing it in a modern, caring, consultative manner.
Mm.
And they're obviously having a dance between, we do need to feed the monster of our costs. Every appointment didn't come for free, no matter what. We kind of have to allocate, some sort of budget to it.
Right.
So that is interesting. Um, is there, not that you have to reveal your close rate or anything, but is there an idealized industry close rate that maybe you guys are already hitting or surpassing, or that is just kind of standardized for the industry at large?
Yeah, I'm thinking, from what I've kind of just in my conversations, that around 30 to 35% seems to be what I've heard. And we're a little bit under that, honestly. And um, anytime I hear that we're not quite hitting the mark is exciting for me, because it's like opportunity.
Mm,
I mean, I don't I don't view that as kind of a negative at all. It's like, oh, it's great. It's room for us to get better. One of the things that we have also started to do is provide options for customers. So, there's like a full repair option. There's you just want to get the basics done. So, by doing that, I think it kind of gives the customer a little more control over, their decisions and not just here's a one size fits all. So I feel like just in general, it's nice to be able to choose as a customer. So that's also helped us as well.
Okay. Anything with financing in terms of offering that? Any vendors you guys maybe use if you do offer financing?
We do offer financing, and we use Green Sky, and we've had good success with them. Again, I would say that it's an opportunity for us to really. It's about education, I think, with the Green Sky piece, especially on the payment side, and
Mm,
that we are uh, also training and getting better at because we have, if you can really boil down a $20,000 project to these are your monthly payments, I mean, that's kind of a game changer. That's how the car industry sells cars and that's how people run their, you know, daily budget or I'm sorry, monthly budgets, right? They know how much money they have each month and they can allocate for it.
yeah, I would say the monthly aspect has been a game changer in financing because, some of these numbers, unfortunately, it's kind of like the cancer doctor, like, hey, you live for 50 years, perfect bill of health, you are a vegan, you're gluten free, whatever the heck, you went to the gym 5 days a week or whatever, and then boom, out of nowhere, the cancer's here, and you're like, oh, this is so scary. I don't want to have to see a doctor for this. Like, I wish I didn't have to. And similar with you guys is like they don't want to have to see you guys per se. They're happy that there's a good solution and good people out there that can help, of course.
Yeah.
And you guys seem like you're kind of poised to be in the space where you can say, hey, I know you don't necessarily want to see me, but I'm going to make it the best experience possible. And we're going to get you through this. We're going to give you different options. We're not going to be here and say, hey, it's 20 grand up front, take it or leave it. And they're like, man, I don't even have a liquid 20 grand credit cards. They're not sure. You guys can offer an array of solutions that seem to be actually capable of getting that patient, so to speak, handled properly, where it's as painless as something serious can be.
Yeah, we like to joke that they're not nobody seeks us out, right? To with
Mm,
problems. It's not like putting in a new granite countertops or something they can show off to their friends and family in their kitchen or bathroom or something. So it's definitely a different kind of mindset. You want to be the person that can come in and give that assurance that we'll take care of you. And I know you're going. It's really kind of being able to have the empathy, when you're in front of that customer and kind of understand where they're coming from and provide them, the solution and the trust that you'll take care of it.
yeah, love that. Well, in a second here, we'll definitely let you guys share your website, share a phone number, anything like that. But before we wrap up, do you have any tidbits you want to share with the audience? Any other insights? You're at such a cool point in your business. You guys have really hit some milestones. Any quick takeaways that you think are worthwhile? It can be with reference to team members in this world. It can be in reference to owners. It could be in reference to people who one day want to be owners. Any quick little shares that you have, golden nuggets?
One of the things that you just mentioned there about team members that kind of got me thinking, and that's something that we have gotten a lot better at. And the reason we have is because of repetition of interviewing so many people and for our crew positions. And I would say along those lines, when you're hiring someone, be slow to hire, right? So what that means to me is um, what we used to do maybe 5 years ago is like, let's just bring him in. We'll see if it works out. And what that did is that created stress and a culture of just, we didn't vet someone. And now we know what our culture is. We know which when we're interviewing, if someone has a positive attitude and someone they don't necessarily need to have experience in what we do, but if they like working with their hands and they you call their references and they're dependable and they show up with a good attitude, I mean, man, that's been a game changer for us. So I would say to not just go with the first person. If you're kind of on the fence with somebody, it's probably not going to work. You've got to be excited to bring somebody in.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah. And with that, team members, how long does it normally take to get the first few team members? Because you did start the business, it had that organic kind of startup and things like that. Was it something, that was years or months, to get your first full-time person or even part-time person?
Well, we kind of rolled our flipping business with real estate investing into the foundation business. So back, so all of those people came along for the ride. Uh,
Cool.
so we, I don't think it's really hard to find someone, but it's hard to find someone good. And we lucked out with a couple of people, but we had to move on from several others that weren't good fits. So looking back, I guess to answer your question, it's relatively easy to find someone and hire them. But what it's not
Mm,
to do is to find someone that is that's a good fit, right? So and the problem is if you haven't interviewed a lot, now I know because we see them and we know who will fit. So I guess the advice would be for me, what we found is that you want to hire for attitude, and that is the most important piece of anything, is just a person that comes in, for us at least, for our culture, someone that comes in with a smile, and you just know that when they are part of a crew that, because we're working under houses, right? So
mm,
some days are going to suck, right? And if you've got a guy
right.
kind of, grating on your nerves because he's just a negative person, like, it just makes the whole day terrible. So
Mm.
and I would say in any trade, and honestly, any position outside of the trades, that's kind of the most important for me, at least, attitude.
Right. Yeah, it's so funny because that whole old school interview type of thing is like, could you envision yourself grabbing a drink with them? And that could be an alcoholic beverage, that could be a coffee, that could be a tea, that could be a whatever. But can you stand each other? In some businesses, you just need an analyst, you need an accountant minded person. They may not drink any of those items, believe
Maybe,
it or not.
maybe.
That's they just drink wheatgrass. I don't know. But yeah, in certain things, you certainly want people who, it's got to check the box of that. And then under that are the capabilities. There's like the hard skills, soft skills, things of that nature. But yeah, culture comes up all the time. And I think that that's kind of amongst it, where it's like, we're going to be together for a long time. I mean, these businesses, it's not often that, you're like these behemoths that sell. Those behemoths didn't happen overnight. In this arena, particularly, this is not something that you're typically doing for 2 years, selling it, and then living on the lake or living at the beach, in your yacht forever. This is something that has a horizon. With that in mind, I know it's somewhat earlier on in the process, but would you ever foresee selling a business like this, or is this something that you think you just cash flow and kind of delegate forever?
Well, it's kind of interesting, that question, because I just purchased the other half from my brother in the past
Cool.
months. So right now my focus is 100% on just kind of getting my arms around it and getting it healthy and growing it. So, but I mean, eventually, you can't keep a business. You die and the business dies, or, maybe your kids take it over, or you sell it. I mean, you know, there is no scenario where you have to make one of those outcomes happens, right? So I think you should always try to build your business so that it is sellable. Because then you got the choice. To be able to do, you can stay in it if you love it, which I do. But obviously, if you don't have that choice, then you're kind of stuck with a job that,
Mm.
not really a business. You've got a kind of just a 80-hour a week job.
Right. Yeah. Stressful, demanding. You're working, like you said, 80 hours. Let's say it's double of what you used to or normally would work, perhaps. All right, awesome. Love it, love it. Could you please share a good phone number, a good website? Of course, a lot of our audience here is in the business, but we may have some potential prospects, some potential people in the future who need your services or need your help. So, how can people find you website wise, phone number wise?
Yeah, I'd say website, just kind of search Foundation Doctor. That's our company name. And then it'll pop up on Google. The website is actually foundationdoctornc.com, but if you just Google Foundation Doctor, it will pop up. As far as our phone number, it's 980-228-9611, for any kind of business needs. But yeah, that's our digits.
Cool. All right. Well, we are going to sign off. Brandon, you and I are going to stay on the line, but thank you guys so much for listening. Let's see if I can get it to another episode of Foundation Repair Success Secrets. It's only the millionth time I've said it, so I've gotten better since the start of the episode. Thank you so much for coming on. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. See you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for joining us today for another revealing episode of Foundation Repair Success Secrets. Don't forget to subscribe so you can keep discovering the tools, tactics, and techniques to ensure your online presence is as solid as the foundations you repair. Keep digging deep, and we'll see you in the next episode.